All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle some high-level IELTS vocabulary today, but we're going to do it in a really interesting way. We're going to use the tragic but fascinating story of a long-lost animal to learn some killer collocations. I'm talking about the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. So, what was this thing? It looked like a dog, had stripes like a tiger, and poof, vanished like a ghost. The thing is, the thylacine wasn't a dog or a tiger. It was actually a unique marsupial. And you know what? Its story is the perfect way to learn some really powerful vocabulary that's going to stick in your head and seriously impress your IELTS examiner. Okay, first up, painting a picture. Let's start by describing this animal, really bringing it to life. Being able to describe things clearly is a massive skill for the IELTS speaking test, and these next few phrases are absolute gold for that. Okay, so here's our first one. Bore a superficial resemblance to. It's a bit of a mouthful, right? But it's super useful. It basically means something looked a bit like something else, but only on the surface. So the thylacine, it bore a superficial resemblance to a dog. This is a fantastic academic phrase because it lets you make a really smart comparison. You're saying, yeah, they look kind of similar, but there's more to the story. That's a high-level skill right there. And look how you can use it. This phrase is a total game changer for your writing Task 2 essays. Imagine you're comparing two things. You can use this to say, okay, on the surface, they seem alike. And then bam, you hit them with the really important differences. It just shows a level of sophistication that examiners love to see. So what was it that really made the thylacine stand out? Well, that would be its distinguishing feature. This is such a flexible phrase, you can use it for anything. An animal, a building, your phone. For the thylacine, its most distinguishing feature was those dark stripes on its back. That's actually how it got the nickname Tasmanian tiger. See, this phrase instantly gets to the point. Let's say you're in the speaking test and they ask you to describe your phone. You could start with, well, the most distinguishing feature of my phone is probably its amazing battery life. It's so clear, so direct, a perfect way to kick off a high-scoring answer. Next up, where did this creature actually live? I mean, you could just say it's home, but to really score high, you'd say its prime habitat. This is absolutely essential vocabulary for any topic about the environment. The thylacine's prime habitat was the eucalyptus forests in Tasmania. Using a phrase like this just shows you really know your stuff. And this example just nails it, doesn't it? Using specific, on-topic vocabulary like prime habitat makes you sound so much more knowledgeable. You're not just throwing around basic words. You have a specific vocabulary for environmental topics. And trust me, that is a direct path to a higher score. All right, Section 2, Survival and Decline. The story gets a bit sad here, but this is where we find some really powerful collocations about cause and effect. Okay, these three phrases tell a little story all by themselves. First, the thylacine was exclusively carnivorous. That just means it only ate meat. Simple enough. But that became a big problem when food was scarce, when food was hard to find. So what did it do? It had to compensate for that. It actually developed a super wide jaw to help it survive when things got tough. Now that phrase, compensate for, it's amazing for problem solution essays. Think about it. In a Task 2 question about, say, traffic, you could write something like, governments could invest more in public transit to compensate for the negative impact of so many cars. See how that works? It's perfect for linking a solution to a problem. But sadly, those cool adaptations just weren't enough in the end. The thylacine population absolutely plummeted. It experienced a dramatic decline. Now this phrase, this is your absolute go-to for writing Task 1. Anytime you see a line on a graph that just falls off a cliff, that's a dramatic decline. And here you go. This image is the textbook definition of a dramatic decline. Just look at that difference between the 1800s and the 1930s. It's huge. The word dramatic is perfect because it captures everything, how fast it happened, and just how big the collapse was. So the big question is, why? What caused this massive drop? Well, in formal academic writing, we don't always say the cause was X. A more sophisticated way is to use the phrase generally attributed to. It's basically a smart way of saying, here's what most people think the reason was. Using this phrase really shows you've got a handle on academic language. You're not stating something as a 100% cold hard fact. You're presenting the common belief, the main theory. And that careful, nuanced language is exactly what good academic writing is all about.
So, for the thylacine, its decline was generally attributed to a couple of things. First, the relentless efforts of farmers who hunted them. Relentless means it just never stopped. And second, the loss of habitat. Both of these are incredibly powerful phrases you can use when you're talking about environmental or social issues.
Okay, let's get to the final chapter of this story, a species legacy, and with it, our last set of collocations. People did eventually try to save them. They tried to breed them in captivity, in zoos, but it was just too little too late. The last known thylacine died in a zoo back in 1936. By that point, the whole species was already on the edge of extinction. Edge of extinction. What a powerful phrase. It's so evocative. It really adds weight and urgency to your writing when you're talking about conservation. You could easily write, many species are now on the edge of extinction because of deforestation, and it just has so much more impact. Here's the cool thing, though. Even today, some people swear they see thylacines roaming around in the wild, but here's the catch. What every single one of these sightings lacks is definitive evidence. That means final, undeniable, you can't argue with it proof. And this is another one that's just perfect for academic writing. Think about science, research, even law. Anytime you need to talk about the need for solid, concrete proof, definitive evidence is the phrase you want. It shows you get what a high standard of proof really means. All right, we've done it. We've followed the thylacine's entire story, and in the process, we've built up an awesome toolkit of collocations. Let's put them all together and have a look. And here they are. This is the slide you want to screenshot. We've got everything from bore superficial resemblance to, for those smart comparisons, dramatic decline for your charts, and definitive evidence for your academic essays. Really getting these down will make a huge difference to your speaking and writing. Oh, and you'll see a couple of others here like nervous temperament. That's a great one for describing personality. Have a look at that one later. So that leads to the final question. Which one of these are you going to use first? Seriously, the only way to make vocabulary your own is to actually use it. So don't just stare at the list. Pick one, just one, and try to make a sentence with it today. Thanks so much for joining me for this breakdown. Remember, every single one of these phrases is another step towards that IELTS score you're aiming for.